In the letter, the sender admitted to being the perpetrator of the murders and mocked the police. After receiving this letter, police believed it was just a malicious prank by someone, so they did not take it seriously and did not publish the contents of the letter. Little did they know that not long after, another murder occurred in the Whitechapel area. At 1 a.m. on Sunday, September 30th, 1888, a carriage driver discovered a woman lying on Burner Street in the Whitechapel area. The victim was identified as Elizabeth Stride, 44 years old, working as a prostitute. Police arrived at the scene and found 2 stab wounds on the victim's neck, some bruises on her chest. The cause of death was excessive blood loss from the left carotid artery. The victim was not disemboweled. A witness said that around 12:35 a.m. that day, he saw Elizabeth standing leaning against a wall, talking to a man of average build, wearing a long black coat. He heard Elizabeth say, "Not tonight, some other night." Another witness said that around 12:45 a.m. he saw Elizabeth being attacked by 4 men. This man had black hair, was about 1.65 meters tall, had a brown mustache. This man tried to drag Elizabeth onto the street, but failed. Then the man pushed Elizabeth to the ground. Because the method of this murder was slightly different from the previous cases, police did not link them together. 45 minutes after Elizabeth's body was discovered, at 1:45 a.m., a patrolling police officer discovered another woman lying on the ground at Mitre Square, less than 1 kilometer from where Elizabeth was killed. The victim was identified as Catherine Eddowes, 46 years old, also working as a prostitute. There were 2 stab wounds on the victim's neck, her abdomen was cut open, her intestines were pulled up and draped over her right shoulder with some unidentified liquid on them. The victim's left kidney and most of her uterus had been removed and were not found at the scene. It is speculated that the killer took them when he left. Police speculated that after killing Elizabeth, the killer used a similar method to disembowel Catherine, but because someone passed by, he had to quickly leave the scene. While fleeing, he encountered Catherine and then killed and disemboweled her. Therefore, these 2 murders may have been committed by the same killer. The patrolling police officer who discovered Catherine's body said that around 1:30 a.m., when patrolling through this area, he did not see anyone. Therefore, Catherine's time of death was deduced to be between 1:30 a.m. and 1:45 a.m. At 3 a.m., another police officer found Catherine's blood-stained apron on Golston Street, not far from the crime scene. On the wall near where the apron was found, there was a message scrawled in chalk, seemingly implying that Jews were responsible for these serial killings. Because graffiti like this often appeared in the Whitechapel area, police could not determine whether it was left by the killer or had been there before. Fearing that these words could incite hatred and riots if seen by the public, police took it upon themselves to erase them. 2 murders occurring on the same night caused great panic among residents living near the Whitechapel area. A group of merchants, dissatisfied with the police's inability to solve the case for a long time, established the Whitechapel Vigilance Committee, chaired by a man named George Lusk. The committee organized local residents to patrol at night and monitor suspicious people. They also offered a reward of £50 for anyone who provided useful information. 2 days after the murders, the Central News Agency received another letter with the following content. "I told you last time it wasn't a joke." To the boss, "Tomorrow you'll hear about Jack the Sly and the double murder. Too bad the first bitch screamed, so I didn't have time to cut off her ear. For police, thanks for keeping the last letter back till I got to work again. Jack?" This letter was still written in red ink. The handwriting was also similar to the previous letter. This time, the writer called himself Saucy Jackie. He claimed responsibility for the deaths of both Elizabeth and Catherine. However, police investigated that this letter was sent 24 hours after the 2 murders occurred. Everything described in the letter was public information that had been published in the press. Therefore, police believed that these 2 letters were a malicious prank by the same journalist. However, this time, police published the contents of the 2 letters. The contents of the 2 letters caused a public sensation. In the first letter, the killer said he would cut off the victim's ear, and Catherine's ear was indeed cut off. These 2 things coincided. so many people believed that the person calling himself Jack the Ripper was very likely the real killer. In fact, at that time, newspapers had received hundreds of letters, most of which were malicious pranks. These 2 letters could also be a prank by someone, but the name Jack the Ripper mentioned in them was too special, so later this name was used to refer to the killer. On October 16, 1888, George Lusk, chairman of the Whitechapel Vigilance Committee, received another letter with the following content. From hell, Mr. Lusk, sir. I send you half the kidney I took from one woman, preserved it for you. T'other piece I fried and ate, it was very nice. I may send you the bloody knife that took it out, if you only wait a while longer. Signed, Catch Me When You Can, Mr. Lusk. Unlike previous times, the killer did not call himself Jack the Ripper in the letter, but only sent along a small wooden box. When Lusk opened the wooden box, there was indeed half a kidney inside. This time, the police finally took the matter seriously. They discovered that the handwriting in the 3rd letter was clearly different from the previous 2 letters. In addition, the 3rd letter also had many spelling and grammatical errors, clearly written by a different person. Police sent the half kidney in the box to the Royal London Hospital for examination. The doctor said this kidney was a left kidney of a person that had been preserved in strong alcohol. When Catherine Eddowes' body was discovered, her left kidney was missing. Therefore, many people believed that this kidney belonged to Catherine. However, due to the limitations of forensic techniques at that time, doctors could not be 100% certain whether this was a human kidney, let alone whether it belonged to Catherine. Therefore, there were also opinions that this was an animal kidney and the letter was just a malicious prank by someone. This issue is still controversial to this day. After Jack the Ripper appeared, police received hundreds of letters claimed to be from him, most of which were fake. However, this letter is considered to have the highest possibility of being sent by the killer. While the police were still unsure what to do, another murder occurred. At 10:45 a.m. on Friday, November 9, 1888, the assistant of a landlord came to Dorset Street in the Whitechapel area to collect rent from Mary Jane Kelly. Kelly, 25 years old, working as a prostitute, was 6 weeks behind on rent. Kelly lived in a small room with a door and 2 windows on the side. The assistant came to knock on the door, but no one answered. He tried to turn the doorknob, but could not open it from the outside. Then he went to the side window, but the curtain blocked his view, and he could not see inside. However, the assistant soon discovered a hole in the window glass covered with cloth. The assistant then pulled back the curtain and removed the cloth on the window. He was horrified to see Kelly lying on the bed, blood flowing profusely on the floor. The assistant immediately reported to the police. Police quickly arrived at the scene and conducted an investigation. Kelly's room was not large, containing a bed and 3 tables, a chair. Above the bed hung a print of a fisherman's dead wife. Kelly lay on the bed naked, with clear strangulation marks on her neck and 2 cuts. Her abdomen was cut open, internal organs were taken out, her chest was also cut off. Her face was mutilated beyond recognition. After examining the body, the forensic staff concluded that the cause of Kelly's death was throat cutting, followed by dismemberment. The murder weapon was identified as a knife, 2.5 centimeters wide and 15 centimeters long. The method of killing and the murder weapon were similar to previous cases, so it could be deduced that this was committed by Jack the Ripper. A friend of Kelly's provided information to the police. She said that around 2 a.m. that day, Kelly had asked to borrow 6 pence from her and then left. Not long after, she saw a Jewish man about 30 years old approach Kelly. The two seemed to know each other. Kelly's friend felt this man looked strange. When Kelly and the man passed by, the man deliberately pulled his bowler hat down low, as if not wanting his face to be seen. She saw Kelly and the man walk towards Kelly's house around 2:45 a.m. Unfortunately, police could not find the identity of this man. Notably, after this case, Jack the Ripper disappeared without a trace. No more murders with similar methods occurred in London. Some people noted that from the 2nd to the 5th case, all 5 victims were disemboweled, while Martha, the victim in the first case, was only stabbed multiple times in the abdomen. Therefore, the killer who caused Martha's death may have been a different person, and her case should not be linked to the subsequent cases. As a result, The 5 victims in the 4 cases from the 2nd to the 5th are called the canonical 5, while Martha's case is excluded. This series of serial killings caused panic in British public opinion. The name Jack the Ripper struck terror into people. To hunt down the killer, the British government sent the top investigative team at that time to the Whitechapel area. At that time, the Sherlock Holmes detective novel series was very popular, so they invited Arthur Conan Doyle, the author of the novel series, to assist in the investigation. The investigation team noticed that the victims had some things in common. They were all prostitutes, most were married and had children, were heavy drinkers. The victims all showed no signs of vigorous resistance. The first victim, Martha, also had these characteristics, so some people believe Martha may have been Jack the Ripper's first victim. Except for the first case, the other 4 victims, Mary, Annie, Elizabeth, and Catherine, were all cut from left to right on the neck. For the victim in the last case, Kelly, because her body was dismembered, the direction of the cut could not be determined. However, based on the bloodstains at the scene, police speculated that her neck was also cut from left to right. The investigation team believed that the killer may have had knowledge of anatomy, possibly a doctor or butcher. Subsequently, police investigated almost all butchers and doctors in London, but did not find any suspicious targets. This serious incident came to the attention of Queen Victoria. The Queen believed that the Whitechapel area was near the London docks, and every Thursday and Friday, some ships traveling between continental Europe would stop there, then leave on Saturday or Sunday. Therefore, the killer could be a butcher on a ship. This would also explain why the murders all occurred on weekends. Subsequently, police investigated the docking records of these ships, but did not find any ship with docking dates that perfectly matched the dates of the murders. Almost everyone in the Whitechapel area was investigated and screened, from over 2,000 suspects down to over 300, including 80 heavily suspected targets, but still no results. In 1892, after 4 years of large-scale investigation that had consumed a lot of manpower and resources of the police without yielding satisfactory results, the police had to temporarily suspend the investigation. This has become one of the most famous serial murder cases in England and around the world. Since Jack the Ripper appeared, detectives all over the world have wanted to solve this case. Even though the case happened over 100 years ago, people still continue to research it. They have discovered some characteristics of the killer. First, Jack had some knowledge of human anatomy. He struck late at night when there were no streetlights, and it was pitch dark, making it easy to conceal his identity. He came and went without anyone noticing. He acted very quickly and skillfully, showing that he was very proficient with a knife. Jack liked to cut the victims' necks from left to right, suggesting he may have been left-handed or ambidextrous. The victims all showed no signs of vigorous resistance, indicating that Jack may have been very physically strong and able to quickly subdue the victims. Except for the first case, the other cases all occurred on weekends, showing that Jack may have had a stable job. He seemed to deeply hate prostitution. All the victims were prostitutes. This may be related to his personal experiences. Based on these characteristics, police identified several suspects. Suspect Montague John Druitt, 31 years old, occupation, lawyer. His father was a famous surgeon. From a young age, he had been exposed to and learned a lot of knowledge about anatomy. According to the investigation, Montague suffered from severe hereditary mental illness. His mother and grandmother both committed suicide due to mental illness. On December 30th, 1888, Montague committed suicide. This was 1 month after the last murder in the series of cases occurred. After he died, Jack the Ripper disappeared without a trace. Therefore, there is a hypothesis that Montague was Jack the Ripper. Suspect Francis Tumblety was a doctor born in Ireland who had traveled extensively throughout Europe. Francis hated women, especially prostitutes. Francis had bizarre hobbies. At a dinner party, he showed off his collection of female internal organs to everyone, and proudly boasted that his collection came from women of all social classes. During the time of the Jack the Ripper murders, Francis was arrested by police in the Whitechapel area for sexual harassment. During the time he was out on bail, he learned that the police had listed him as a suspect in the serial murders, so he fled to America. British police once tried to extradite him from the US, but failed due to lack of evidence. Francis then lived in the US until the end of his life. Suspect Severin Klasowski was born in Poland. At the age of 14, he was sent by his family to be an assistant to a surgeon. He then participated in some surgical courses and worked in hospitals as an assistant with some knowledge of anatomy. Shortly before the Jack the Ripper murders occurred, he had come to England and worked as an assistant at a barbershop in the Whitechapel area. In 1891, he left England for America. The reason he was suspected was because later he poisoned and killed his 3 wives. This serial killing behavior made people associate him with Jack the Ripper. He was arrested in 1903 and sentenced to death. Therefore, there are opinions that Severin was Jack the Ripper. Suspect Lizzie Williams. This was a female suspect. Her husband was John Williams, a royal physician at the time. In 2011, while arranging the belongings of the Williams couple, people accidentally discovered a scalpel 2.5 centimeters wide and 15 centimeters long. This knife perfectly matched the murder weapon that Jack the Ripper used. John Williams and Mary Jane Kelly, one of the victims, had a long-standing illicit relationship. His wife Lizzie could not bear children, so the couple had separated. Some people believe that in a fit of extreme jealousy, Liz killed these women. This would also explain why the victims' uteruses were damaged in that way. Suspect Aaron Kosminski was a Jewish immigrant working as a hairdresser in the Whitechapel area. He was once one of the main suspects of the police. There was a witness who believed Aaron was the killer, but this person did not want to provide evidence against a Jew, so Aaron was not prosecuted. Aaron suffered from severe mental illness. In 1891, he threatened a woman with a knife and was subsequently sent to a mental hospital. In the hospital, he was always afraid of being poisoned by others and refused to bathe. On September 9, 1919, Aaron died in the mental hospital at the age of 53. In 2007, Russell Edwards, a British businessman, bought Catherine's shawl found on the night of the murder at an auction. The laboratory extracted DNA of the victim Catherine and DNA of an unidentified man from this shawl. After comparison, the laboratory discovered that the DNA of this man matched the DNA of descendants of suspect Aaron Kosminski. They believe Jack the Ripper was Aaron. However, this result has been questioned by other experts. They believe the shawl may have been contaminated before being examined in the laboratory because it had been touched by many people in public exhibitions. Therefore, the laboratory results are not convincing. This DNA analysis report has also never been peer-reviewed by other experts, so it is not reliable. The conclusion that Aaron Kosminski was Jack the Ripper is still controversial. Due to technical limitations at that time, the evidence was not well preserved. Investigators also lacked awareness of preserving the crime scene. If that evidence had been preserved intact and modern forensic techniques applied, perhaps the case could have been solved. Over 100 years have passed, and the identity of Jack the Ripper remains a mystery. Whether he was Aaron Kosminski the barber or someone else, perhaps only Jack knows the answer. The video ends here, and we'll see you in the next videos. Goodbye.